so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. So Senegal, a West African French-speaking country, has now had a new president and the youngest since 1960, since it got its independence. Bassirou Diomaye Faye, a left-wing pan-Africanist, was sworn in today in an event attended by some African leaders, including our president, Bola Tinubu. He's Senegal's youngest president after sweeping to a first-round victory on the pledge of radical reforms 10 days after he was released from prison. The 44-year-old has never before held any political or elected office, for several African leaders attended the ceremony in the new town of the Aniado. But what lesson does this have on African politics and leadership? Let's get some perspectives on the lessons for Nigeria's politics, political participation, especially for young persons. So it doesn't mean that Mr. Faye just started yesterday. He must have been thinking about having a vision and a dream of wanting to become the leader of that country. Now he has it on his hands now. Let's speak to a former presidential candidate in the 2023 election, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, who joins us live from New Jersey in the United States. Thank you so much, Sowore, for joining us tonight on the program.
Thank you for bringing me.
And I guess you are really acclimatizing and getting to be with your family properly. You've been away from them for quite a while, isn't it?
Yes, it's been 5 years I've been away from my wife and kids. So yes, acclimatizing, yes, but getting used to cold, a challenge.
You can't eat your cake and have it. You said you'll be coming back to Nigeria, that the struggle continues in some of the video that I saw that surfaced online. So you enjoy the good temperature here, or you keep up with the cold there in New Jersey. You pick one. But thank you so much, Sowore, for joining us today. Let's talk about Mr. Faye, who has now become Senegal's new president. What is your view, first and foremost, about this transition in Senegal?
Well, it's important to mention that when Africans were yearning for independence, they actually went for very young, vibrant people. And the question we keep asking ourselves is, at what point did we lose that ability to have young people, vibrant, intelligent young people, lead the African continent? And you would notice that this happened as a result of colonialism. The colonial masters weren't too comfortable with young, vibrant, radical African leaders. And that was what led to the death of Lumumba and a bunch of presidents that were kicked out of office by the collusion of local African, betrayers and these political colonial leaders all over Africa. So this is not the first time. Even in Nigeria, the first crop of leaders that came up after independence were in their 20s. The man who first moved the motion for Nigeria's independence, that's late Chief Tony Enahoro, was his 20s. The Zigs of this world, Bafemi Awolowo, they weren't old people, but again, over time, we lost that opportunity to have vibrancy, and that's why you see Africa the way it is today. But it's interesting that majority of the people I've seen there, this swearing in, are the same old African leaders who would not allow the youth to have a chance. But there's a lesson to be learned from Senegal, that this presidential change of baton did not happen by accident. It was through serious revolutionary struggle. You can imagine someone who came from prison 10 days before and became president of Senegal, when, as a matter of fact, the man who was there didn't want to leave, and he had postponed the election very recently to an unknown date, but he was heavily resisted, and that's how Senegal came about this. So everybody who is celebrating this must also understand that freedom comes out of struggle.
So, I'm more concerned about two things. I'm talking about the politics of Senegal tonight, but not dwelling on those events. We're trying to draw lessons and inspiration from what happened and perhaps what we can glean and learn from it as a people. Political participation first and foremost. For a 44-year-old to become a president, the man has never been into any elected office before now. That is audacious. That is a lot of vision, isn't it?
It is, and this was where we were coming from when we started our political movement in 2018. And people were saying, well, you need experience. And we kept telling them, experience is not going to take you anywhere because it's experienced politicians that put Nigeria in the condition that it is today. Experienced thieves, experienced murderers, killers, corrupt people. And now you've seen it in Senegal, that you don't actually need experience. You need leaders that have vision, people who are motivated to lead their people. I must make a caveat here that until we see the performance of these particular persons who have taken over power in Senegal, we should not celebrate too quickly because we've had young people in Nigeria lead. The guy that just left Kogi is very young, and look at the way he left the state. And this is what I've always said, that my problem is not with old age. My problem is with old ideas of African leaders. They have no new ideas. And you can have some young people who live through very difficult old ideas, like the likes that we've had in Kogi, not just one, the senator from there, the governor there, and several other persons who are young people who are disgracing their youthfulness.
You're not yourself a young person any longer. You've crossed the 50-year mark. So you are joining the folk that will say older folks. You look at it, what is youthfulness? What is young age? What does it have to do with active leadership? Like you mentioned, we've seen young people that have failed in leadership. And being young doesn't mean an automatic good leadership. And I'll go to some of the things that Mr. Faye has said, even before being sworn in. He had said that he's going to move past what the colonial masters' legacies are. And he said it's made some very radical and dramatic policy decisions, which in the coming days, one will see how that will affect or impact on the economy or the welfare of the people of Senegal. But then let's put some attention on young people in Nigeria. How are they able to organize, to mobilize? That is important. If young people are not able to organize and mobilize, if they spend most of their lives working in private sector, doing stuff for themselves and never thought about leadership, how then can this kind of vision come to pass, Sowore?
Well, that's a very important question, and this is a question I've addressed. So you must understand that Mr. Faye and his colleague set up a political party in 2014. And when he ran for election, they were thoroughly beaten. They only had one position in a local government or so in 2014. And then they kept going and came back in and then a few years later and fought, but they came third. And eventually now they've won power. So political participation is necessary. Creating political parties that are not tainted by the old is also very important. But I must insist, and I agree with you here, that just being young in numbers is not enough. You must be persons of character, you must have mission, you must have vision, and you must have will to work for the people of your country. So, and the part about experience is also very important because you hear that from Nigerians. I know they do that for different purposes. Oh, you need experience. This guy was a tax collector. That's the best he has ever done. He's not even known to have been an activist before now. It was him and his friends in the tax sector that formed the political party. Came together and defeated the old guards. But this is not the first time in Senegal that the old guards seems to have been defeated. That's why I said earlier that we should be careful because even the guy who was defeated, whose candidate was defeated, that's Makasa, was also seen as a reformer when he first came years ago. In fact, he was saying that he didn't want to spend more than 4 years in power. And then he came to power, he got used to it, and he became a terrible dictator himself. So it's very important. But when you question our young people, the question is, what are young people doing? That's the question. and young people who are doing what I call tag along, they are more interested in becoming, senior special assistants to governors or senators. I have not seen that clear aspiration on the part of our young people to go and become the leaders of their country. And most of the time, it's these young people that are pulling down the few young people who are courageous enough to say it is time to turn the corner. I don't see myself as a youth anymore, but I look youthful, and and I can always defend my youthfulness. But that's not the reason why I want to be president of Nigeria. It has never been the reason. It has always been that I have such a background in making sure that we fix our country, and that's what drove me into running for office first in 2018 and 2023. So this is a lesson, because our young people also have a tendency to praise other young people who are making this kind of difference in other places. But when it comes to them, there's some kind of a self-sabotage. You remember in 2018, there was this law of not too young to run. And I challenged it at that time. Why would you need a law for young people to run? You take power. Nobody will give power to you, via any constitutional amendments or laws. You take power. And now, so 4 years later, how many young people has that produced in the most important sector of the country, which is the presidency? You cannot be young, mission-driven, be visionary, and go and hide your bushel under some of these old people who have no idea how to even operate a phone. So, but youthfulness is also important in the sense that, you need leaders that are alert, who are capable, who are able to be responsive, who don't have to spend half of the time in a hospital. I'm not saying young people don't fall sick, but especially the ones that we know who are falling apart. They are doing us no good in our country. And we saw that with Buhari and subsequently the man there now.
I do know that old age is not a disease. Also, one thing that is important is that experience also brings a lot of benefit and profit. We are drawing lessons from the experience of Senegal and now become the leader of that country. Let's take a quick look at some of the things, although Sowore has mentioned them, but let's take a look at some of those things that are important in the lives and the profile of Mr. Faye, the president of Senegal. Yeah, he's 44 years. Yeah. Perhaps was one among a group of political opponents freed from prison 10 days before the 24 March presidential election in that country. He's never held any elected office before. He defeated Macky Sall in that election. He was almost not going to participate in election because that election was not going to happen at some point, but eventually it happened. He's a former tax inspector, which is what he's known for, that he's done for himself, apart from the fact that he joined forces his former boss or his former political mentor, who was unable to run eventually. He's the 5th president since independence from France in 1960. He's the very first president of that country to openly admit to a polygamous marriage. He has vowed to restore national sovereignty over key assets such as the oil, gas, and fishing sectors. He is also saying that he wants to leave the regional CFA, the currency of the country, and he wants to invest more in agriculture with the aim of reaching food self-sufficiency. These are very ambitious policy decisions from Mr. Faye. And if you look at it, this look like some situation or scenario that you can almost liken to what we experienced in Nigeria. What are your thoughts, Sowore?
When I ran in 2018, I had what I call spicer hits. They're bigger than this, big ambition to take charge of national assets, employ Nigerians, turn Nigeria to a construction site, and ensure that we pay wages that are living wages. And I wanted to restore security, engage in fantastic infrastructural development, invest in education such that education will be free up to university level, and even give study grants to students. But when we came out with all these things, people started saying, no, there's no money to do it, until it's now proven to them that there's more than enough money to do whatever we want to do if we decide to do it. But you have to elect to power or office the person who can make these things happen. And that is why the difference you saw between us and what we are celebrating today in Senegal. It's not enough to celebrate it. It's for us to embrace it locally too. It's for us to say to ourselves, we have had enough of all these ODs in our system, and they have not done experience. This is the Nigeria of experienced people. Maybe it's time to try the unexperienced, but I would never describe myself as an inexperienced person, because I've always been in leadership where it is most difficult. It's not just leadership of, there's appointments. I've never taken an appointment before, and it was deliberate. And leadership that's helped the country to transition from one difficulty to the other, both political and in some cases economic, when we did fight the World Bank policies when we first arrived at the university in our days. So now you've seen it, and it's been shown to Nigerians that the possibilities are there for you to elect very vibrant leaders in your own country, so that the next time we have young leaders, it will be in Nigeria, and it will not be Nigerians trending a young leader elected somewhere with 2 wives. And I have nothing against him having 2 wives, I'm just saying.
Well, do you see a 40-something-year-old becoming a president of Nigeria in the nearest future?
I would love to say it, but you have to ensure that 75% of our people, young people who are below 40, are not working against that dream. It's not just about the 45-year-old person. I want to see a great Nigerian become the leader of this country in my lifetime. That's one of my goals, and it can be a male or female. So,
but Sowore, from your experience, even some of you who were younger or new entrants into the race in 2019, you were so chaotic to the point that you couldn't even organize yourself in the little groups that you belong to as a presidential candidate. And so there is a fear how bad young persons find it difficult to organize. How well can young people organize to have a vision of young and energetic people going into the fray?
That's why you need radical young people. You see, in 2018 and 2019, when we were having our whole young presidential candidate meetings, which I was never part of beyond just one meeting, to be clear, I told everybody who was listening at that time that these young people, the people who claim to be young presidential candidates, were working for the old system. And that's what has happened now. Ask yourself, where are all those young presidential candidates of 2019? They're all working as special assistants, deputy to somebody, or they were all set up by the system. And that was why the gang up was largely against me, because I stood out different from the rest of them. The only person that was around at that time, who you cannot even call young, was Kingsley Moghalu, who's still around today. Ask yourself, do you still remember their names and where they are today? I'm the only person who survived that period. I'm the only person who, after that period, went to jail. I'm the only person who was able to sustain a political party and ran in 2023, even though I had maybe 1 day to contest, and I was going to court and I was restricted to Abuja. So that's what lesson should have been learned in 2019. It's not just enough to say some people are young and running for office. Look for the best amongst them. Look for the most resilient. Look for the one that has vision, the one that is not a coward, and the one that is not playing games. If we did that in 2019, we would have been ahead of Senegal today, because I'll be doing my second term in office, and Nigeria would be such a great place today. And I mean it. If I was president in 2019, you won't have the situation that you have in your hands today. I can tell you that for free.
As a way of rounding up, there is a lot of fear about whether or not a young person will join political parties, because what is evident, in fact, in the electoral numbers, there are more than 60% of young people who make up the electoral numbers in Nigeria. And if you go into the larger population, there are more young people between the age of 18 and 35, who make up the larger population of Nigeria of over 200 million. So it means one thing, that the young people are of advantage. But when it comes to voting and using that advantage, they are never nowhere to be found. So that's a big question, isn't it? An election is over. Going into the next election, how do you think, for many young people who are watching tonight, how do you think that mobilization, that orientation, and that intentional calculation of participation can happen?
Well, it is clear now that it is very easy to accomplish that. I am a youthful person. I won't call myself a youth, but I'm young compared to the dinosaurs who are now in politics in Nigeria. But what I'm saying is that we have a political party. We have the African Action Congress. By the way, you should change the name on your ticker. It's AAC. And that's what it did in Senegal. And what it did in Senegal didn't happen overnight. There was a protest in Senegal that was similar to NSAS. And all the young people decided to join a political party. And some of them didn't join. Some of them left even after the protest. It is that political party that matured over time. And you cannot say that you want to take power and not join political power that are revolutionary, especially when you want revolutionary power. And you cannot go and join a party that is not ready for a revolution or that's not interested. Our party, for instance, the AAC, doesn't have a youth leader because every person in the AAC is young. So the opportunities are there. But I tell you one thing, and we must be very clear about this. Now that they've seen what is going in Senegal, they will bring in more young people to create division and confusion again so that we won't be able to accomplish this. But young people must also promise, the youth, radical young people in Nigeria must come together, join one political party. If we have the numbers, we will defeat these guys even before 2027. And don't ask me how. But I will explain that because you're running out of time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Omoyele Sowore, 53-year-old Omoyele Sowore, no longer a youth. A few years ago, we were saying a young candidate, but you cannot even beat it. But you're not in the league of Joe Biden, who is 81 years old, or Donald Trump, who is 77 years old.
And Atiku and Peter Obi, so we are far apart. I'm 10 years younger than all the major candidates. Only myself and I think Adebayo, who is younger than myself, were in our 50s in the last elections, prominent one. But there was also a guy who was even younger than all of us. I think he was in his 30s in the last election. But
Professor Molayin. Yeah.
So the opportunities are there. Vibrant young people, You said it earlier, and I want to close here, that, maybe, being old is not a disease. It's not, but it's a barrier. That's why people retire after the age of 60 and 65.
All right. Thank you so much. Omoyele Sowore was a presidential candidate of the AAC in the 2023 presidential election. Thank you so much for your thought tonight.